Okay, welcome back to the Desert Harvest. Look at this. I'm back with my partner in crime, Orrin. Orrin, good to see you, my man.
Hey, what's up, Pete? We've
I
been
can't,
talking a lot lately.
it's true. We got a lot going on. I can't remember. Are you a billionaire? I, are
Yeah,
you a billionaire?
I own a billion blades of Bermuda grass. That's about it.
So I listen to these podcasts and I listen to these billionaires, and there's a theme in those conversations. Like they say, look, you you're not going to really notice the hyper car that you buy compared to your regular car. And that giant house that we have, well, it's nice, but you won't, it's not really as big a jump that it is. But they do call out two things. They're like, get the plane, you will notice having your own plane, and then get a personal chef. They notice that that change that's a
Ah,
life-changing deal.
I like that. Yeah.
So we we have been lucky, you and I. We have got to talk to amazing people, and this is no exception today. So we have our friend Chef Jayson Khademi. Thank you, Jason, for coming on the show and spending some time with us.
I appreciate you guys having me on. I'm excited.
So we have so many things we can talk to you about, and we have a lot of ideas in common. But you have some experiences that I find fascinating, and I'd like to talk about in a variety of ways. But could you tell us a little bit about, you have a role in your life as a personal chef, and
Mhm.
in that role, you have access to food that is growing in front of you that you're using as a part of your, food preparation for your client.
Mhm.
And I'd like to ask you in terms of the effect of having access to that food on flavor. And, as like flavor rules, nobody's going to eat stuff that doesn't taste good. So, I mean, I'm curious about
Absolutely.
the notion of how it affects flavor. And then underpinning that, I have an opinion that that has a meaningful effect on health. So we'd like to kind of start with that as the beginning premise.
Sure. Um, it's one of the coolest parts about my job, and I think it's kind of unique, is that my boss has been working on this urban farm in
Hmm.
downtown Phoenix for over 10 years. She has somebody that takes care of the property, that plants things. I meet with that person. I discuss what we should plant, what I'm interested in. Hey, try these peppers, or hey, how about this eggplant? So it's a really cool relationship that if I see something neat, white, like snow white eggplants or something, hey, plant those. Let's try them.
Hmm.
And so going to the flavor question, I get to try new stuff.
Right.
Like I had never had a jujube before I started working at this place, and
How
she
cool.
has two different kinds of jujube trees. She
Oh
really
yeah.
likes them. So I've had to learn what do I do with them? Do I dry them
Hmm.
out like dates? Yeah,
Mhm,
you can. It's almost like they turn like caramelized. Um,
mhm.
Fresh, not my favorite. It's kind of like like an apple did it with a unripe pear. And that's fine. It has a ton of nutritional value to it.
Hmm.
And so I think that there's a some things that you just have for the nutrition. They don't taste necessarily great, but you could choke them down and you can get like two jujubes gets you 100% of your vitamin C.
There
I
we
mean,
go.
like two fresh ones.
Right.
Jason,
The,
sorry to interject. You're making me laugh because we have jujube trees on our farm, and I've got a big ass basket. It's like a bushel of jujubes, and I feel like I ate a bathtub full of them because my wife
it
just
it never
harvested and bought
ends.
them out. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
and
like
now
one
they're
of the
still
most
there.
bountiful trees on the property. It just never ends. And part of my job is preservation.
Right.
Everything that's
Right.
there, we're saving for a rainy day, so to speak.
Hmm.
And so I have to figure out, like, she has three fig trees. And so I had to figure out, okay, what do I do with these figs? I tried drying them out and we just didn't have the right conditions and they all got moldy. And
Mm.
so I found an Emerald recipe where you just stew them down and can them. And I'm like, boom, done, got it. And
Hmm.
now they may not have 100% of the nutritional value, but now we have stored nutrition. We
Right.
have stored energy. Maybe it's 90% of
Hmm.
what we know that heat affects nutrition for sure.
Right.
The more temperature you add, the more nutrients can degrade. And I try to incorporate that into my cooking where I every day it's at least one raw salad. Like
Right.
pretty much everything else in it is either raw or it's pickled.
Right.
And pickled meaning like cold packed. Like I'll just pickle it and put it in the fridge. I don't put it through a canning process.
Okay.
Those keep most of the nutrients intact from what I understand. I'm not certified, I'm not an expert, but I did have to learn macros and micros when I started working for my boss because she does keto. I don't get
Right.
to pick her cheats,
Okay.
but she does basically meat to veg.
Okay.
That
Well, well, let me ask you, like, in a direct manner, like
shoot.
the from a flavor perspective, what might be an ordinary, I mean,
The
an ordinary thing that you were pulling off the farm that if you were to buy that thing at Safeway, the differences between walking out, getting it, putting it in the kitchen
Mhm.
versus going to the store. Because I mean, for
Look at
me, a tomato is like one of those the
I was
clearest,
I was just gonna say it.
yeah, yeah,
And
tell
it's
me.
because it's refrigerated. Like
Right,
when you look at how things are stored at the grocery store, they kind of tell you the onions in the middle. That's how you should store it at home.
right.
However, before it ever gets there, it's been sitting in a fridge.
Yeah.
It gets that mealy texture, and so tomatoes are hands down the best example of pulling something off the vine
Hmm.
versus something that's been waiting to go onto the shelf for 4 or 5, 6 weeks.
Right.
And as soon as you pull something off the vine, nutritionally does start to degrade. Not drastically right away, but the longer let's say it was 1% a day. And
Sure.
now you've got a tomato that's 5 weeks later, that's what, 30 something day, 35 days.
Right.
So 35% of your nutritional value is gone. And
Hmm.
and this is just hypothetical. I don't know this number
Sure,
for sure.
sure,
I'm
sure.
just saying for an
Yeah.
example. Even if it was 0.5%,
Right.
that's still, 16, 17% that you're losing. And so there's value to looking and seeing what you can grow at home to add
Hmm.
into your own
Yes.
whatever your diet is. You
Mm-hmm.
greens are pretty easy. Lettuce is pretty easy. Radishes are pretty easy. There's perennials that people can grow. It's just getting used to the taste, the flavor.
Sure.
Like I said, nutrition. What's really good with bitter greens? Bacon. Like
Right,
add a
right.
little bit of bacon in there. That's
Yeah,
fantastic.
bacon cures everything, no pun
One
intended.
hundred
Well,
percent.
You
well, it's so I'm curious. Do you all ever grow daikon on the farm on your property?
We were pulling baseball bat sized daikons out last
Yeah.
year. I told her, I was like, the only thing I could do with these is make kimchi. Like that's when you've got a 6 pound daikon, like how do you,
Right.
and my boss is one person. Like I can't, I basically, and for breakfast we have daikon, and lunch a little more daikon, and dinner, guess what? Daikon. Like I can't, I have to kind of spread it around. One of the cool things that I've been able to do is work on some sauces. Like when you have
Okay.
simple foods or you're cooking simply, hot sauces, all different ranges. Tomatillo, zero spice to habanero or ghost pepper or whatever. There's a lot of things that you can do with vegetables, cauliflower, even broccoli. I've made escabeche sauces. I've made romesco sauces, harissa, like lots of
Yeah.
different flavors. And that shit is fun because you don't have to pasteurize it. You can ferment it to get a little, yeah. It's not a great source of probiotics, but it's another probiotic thing you could add to your repertoire. But like daikon, one of my favorites. It's like one of the milder radishes, and it makes really, really good kimchi. In fact, I think there's a version where it's like mainly daikon,
Hmm.
and then they add like a little instead of cabbage.
So do you have, because you do video shorts on the culinary video shorts, recipes, things like
Yeah.
that. And have you ever, I'm curious, this is for my own personal use because we have daikons, and my wife Diana, who's a wonderful cook and she manages our farm, she tends to like to roast them, and it smells like horse shit in our house every time she does it. And I'm like, wait a sec, honey, I love them. They taste great, but anyone who walks in here is going to think we are like the most digestively challenged family. So How do we so I'm interested, do you have a
It's
kimchi video?
it, I do. I actually think I'm pretty sure I do. I
Okay,
know
I'll
I've
look it up.
filmed.
Yeah.
I think I filmed one doing like kimchi in a gallon ferment jar, and I think I did another one where I actually did a sauce out of it.
Okay.
Because we have a bunch of Thai chili pepper plants on property. It's one of my favorite chilies, and my boss also loves Thai food, so I cook a lot of it. But I was able to harvest at different ripening stages, so I had like green, yellow, orange, and red, and I was able to make
Cool.
like different color sauces from the different Thai chilies. It was pretty.
Nice.
It's pretty neat. But daikon, I've never really worked with it like hot.
Yeah,
You know what
don't.
I'm saying? Like I've never baked it, I've never roasted it. It's just I always put it in salads. I just kind of
Yeah,
have it or a kimchi or ferment. I
it's
just kind of
great
have it
raw.
as
Yeah.
yeah, like
Yeah.
like on a mandolin, super thin.
Hmm.
It's one of my favorites for breakfast with like a little bit of butter. Like
Hmm.
French bread, I got that from French breakfast radishes, and daikons are really mild, like French breakfast radish. In
Right.
fact, we just had a ton of those come. That's another good one. I mean, they come up in. You want to feel like a gardener? Plant some French breakfast radishes. They come up in like a month. You
Yeah, they're like
know, they're
popping out
amazing.
of the ground. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
Pete, when we first started, so Jason, my wife and I have a little 3 acre farm here in Chandler,
cool.
and we started just experimenting. We're not farmers,
Hmm.
but we really wanted to start growing our own food, and so radishes were our first harvest, and we did all the different kinds. But the one thing I loved about the daikons was the aeration they provide in the
Hmm.
soil. I mean,
Mhm.
they just dig really deep,
They dig
and
it
then
up.
they're
Yeah,
just super tasty, and even if we let them get a little overgrown, they still weren't too bad. So
yeah.
I yeah, just
It.
I asked her to stop roasting them, but I'm def I've never. So I grew up with a Korean stepmother, and
Mhm.
she makes the best kimchi, and I just never, to this day, I never learned how to make it. And then I'm talking to you, and I'm like, I want to learn how to make kimchi.
So, I would definitely get corrected. I don't do the full like flour yeast mix. But I do add the shrimp paste. That's like a big key
Hmm.
component from
Okay.
what I've gotten yelled. I think I remember getting yelled at when I did my kimchi video. Like, why didn't you put shrimp paste? I'm like, dude, I swear to God I did. I just didn't get a shot of it. Like I swear if you
Right,
didn't get a shot of it, it didn't happen, according to the internet.
right.
But yeah, I made sure I put that in there because my
Cool.
boss is like, "Why the hell do you have shrimp paste?" And I'm like, "Well, using it in some Thai cooking, but we're gonna get some kimchi anyway."
Nice.
So,
So
Okay.
yeah, daikons are like one of my favorites, and it's one of the bet when you think about like energy expended for what you can get that's
Hmm.
still good and tasty and
yeah.
usable and have the nutrition. Daikon's one of the best.
And
I
daikon, I
mean, a
mean, those are they're
2 foot
confidence
vegetable is
builders too. I
crazy.
mean, you want to feel like you can grow something. You stick those radish seeds in there, and they respond. And particularly out where we're at, right? I mean, not everything is friendly. Hey,
Yeah.
Orrin, I'm curious. I mean, in this notion of, I mean, Jason has a farm to table situation in his backyard, effectively to the client's table. And when you were doing the Shenandoah Valley to DC restaurants there, I mean, as it related, there's an economic overlay to that, right? That like there's all kinds of synergies between taking the middleman out of between the farmer and the chef. I mean, when you think about the flavor relationship to the chef to the farmer, was it a similar dynamic? I mean, did it expand at scale, sort of what was going on in that relationship too? I mean, were there new flavors being introduced to the chef that came through the farmers? I'm just curious about that
Oh
because
yeah, I think and Jason, you could probably relate to this when if you use a different uh you know type of beef, like we found a farmer. It's come from, I mentioned, the Washington DC area, and we would buy belted Galloway, a Highland Scottish breed
Hmm.
from uh a farmer, and he did it right. It was, he grew all his own feed, and they were they were out on the pasture and everything, and he was doing everything right, and it was phenomenal beef. And when our chefs, it was like I would call it a pan Middle Eastern restaurant. Like it was upscale Mediterranean and Middle Eastern cuisine,
Hmm.
and everything changed. Like the flavor profiles of the beef versus the Angus we were buying commodity Angus before, even though that was quality beef, they started like building recipes around the flavor,
Yeah.
and and it changed the whole menu. Like
It
yeah.
absolutely what the animal eats absolutely affects how they taste. I mean, ask Japan. They feed
Yeah.
like they have so many different kinds of wagyu over there. A buddy of mine sent me an olive oil wagyu steak.
Oh my
They
goodness.
basically feed the cows olives the last 2 months,
Hmm.
and you could taste it in the beef.
That's
Like you
wild.
could taste it in the fat. And even the smell of the fat, you can it's like olive oil. It's absolutely insane. And so when you have individual people doing individual things, not buying commodity feed, not
Hmm.
even mixing it in, like the Iberico hams, they
Hmm.
finish those things with special acorns from that region. It cannot be duplicated, and I think that's something that's missing. Like Arizona has certain vegetation that
Hmm.
the cows feed off of, and we it has a certain flavor. The majority of beef that I purchase, I get from Underbelly in downtown, and I think there's only two or three farms that they work with that are outside of Arizona,
Hmm.
but it's like right across the border, either in Utah or New
Right. Yeah.
Mexico or
Hmm.
California. And that guy is so dedicated to the quality, and I've seen him get stuff like lamb, and he won't put it out. He goes, this is not something I would sell to somebody. He's still
Hmm.
looking for a lamb guy, if you guys know anybody.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
um,
Okay.
but it's having the local producers um, be proud of their unique product.
Sure.
Like this guy's growing his own feed, has his own cows. You're proud of that end product,
Hmm.
and the chefs definitely recognize that. They could tell the flavor difference because it's not fed with commodity feed and all the same bullshit. It all ends up tasting the same. It
Right.
really does.
Right.
So, I mean, when in the dynamic between you and your client, you have access to, this urban farm, and
Mhm.
it sounds to me like the initial thing that comes out of that is that your palette of flavor colors is expanded by virtue of the fact that you have a certain level of control of what's going to come to you because your client's flexible about, hey, let's try different things, and
Yeah.
there may be things on the property in which take 10 years, like the date tree that you were telling us about. Uh, and then,
And
I mean, so you have an expanded palette, and it sounds like this is a person who's very mindful of their health if they're, keto specific. And I'm
if
curious about that relationship,
yeah, I was a bit of it wasn't a luxury necessarily, but she was very serious about her health and she couldn't do it herself.
Yeah,
It's hard. It's
sure.
hard, especially by yourself. It's
Hmm.
hard to cook for one person,
Yeah.
let alone be nutritionally minded and cook for one person.
Hmm.
You're just eating eggs all day, like that would be it. But when I first started, she was diabetic.
Mm.
And after 4 months of eating
Oh my
keto
gosh.
food, she went pre-diabetic.
Yeah.
And she
Yeah.
was actually able to start enjoying the fruit that she was producing on the product. She couldn't even eat fruit.
Wow.
It was crazy. And so it shows you how in such a short time, like her doctor did her blood test and was like, what the hell changed? And she's like, I got somebody to actually take care of it. And I'm not a nutritionist. I had to learn this stuff as I went along.
Right.
And she even said, hey, I have a nutritionist. You should talk to this person. And I tried to get a hold of them. They never picked up. And I was like, shit, I guess I'm going to have to learn this stuff. Hey, you could fire your nutritionist and I'll take that salary.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right.
I'll put myself through night school if you pay me. Um,
Right.
but learning, keeping the car, it's not zero carbs, but it's 20 carbs. What does 20 carbs look like? It looks
Right.
like a piece of whole wheat toast. It looks like one small red potato. It looks like, and it doesn't sound like a lot, but there's clever ways you can incorporate those things. Okay, I'm not giving her a piece of toast today. I took that piece of toast, ground it down. Now I got breadcrumbs,
Right.
and I'm putting those breadcrumbs in meatballs.
Yes.
You
Hmm.
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
like that's, so there's a lot of trade off. I'm same with the potatoes. Like I'll throw one cut up potato, kind of small, into like chicken soup or something instead of noodles. That's a nice starch in a
Yeah.
chicken soup, right?
Nice.
So I had to relearn how to cook, because most restaurants, unless you have that healthy angle, you use butter to abandon and oil. Like you're just using, you don't care about people's health, you know.
Mm.
I had a Persian restaurant, and it's relatively healthy when you think about it. You know, the rice is probably the least healthy part of it, but it's all grilled vegetables and meats and stuff like that. So I was kind of right in the middle. A lot of the catering we did was, you know, we didn't give a shit. It was all butter and cream and, you know,
Hmm.
this and mayonnaise and elote. Like that's how you get people to remember you. Like I said,
Hmm.
unless they're looking for a healthy whatever.
But this
And
is this is
most,
a case in point, Jason. I mean,
yeah,
what you said
most
here
people
is,
aren't.
but I mean, and look, butter and mayonnaise is less an issue than like
It's
processed,
yeah,
food coming through the window,
it
right?
comes
I mean,
down to
that's
whole food.
yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah,
a whole food. And my boss will eat ice cream if I make it, because it'll be
yeah,
five ingredients.
yeah, yeah,
There's
yeah.
no
Right.
gums, there's no thickeners, there's no bullshit in it.
Yeah,
Because the bullshit is, you don't know how that stuff is processed. You
right,
don't know how you get guar gum.
right,
You know,
Hmm.
and I don't know if it's bad or not. I'm not educated, but what is the process to extract that?
yeah.
Do
Hmm.
they like, why does that factory smell like burning rubber? You know what I'm saying? Like if it's a
Right.
food factory, why does it smell like,
Yeah,
burning rubber?
yeah.
That's a
Why are they
weird
in a
smell.
gas mask? Like, to make it
Right.
something, like,
So
Right.
that's commodity food. And I see more and more people, like you go to Europe, you go to Asia, everybody's got a garden, some kind of garden at their house. Even if it's just like a couple pots on the patio, they're
right.
growing herbs, they're growing cilantro, they're growing something to add some kind of nutritional value, or
Hmm.
to save money, whatever it is.
Sure. Yeah.
Hmm.
It doesn't take much effort to put in a small garden. If you think about the amount of produce that's gone to your produce drawer to die,
Right. Right.
versus having something right outside. I'm guilty of it. I had to start keeping my produce like in the middle of the fridge just so I remembered I had produce.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but so look, Or and I talk a lot about this, and so what you're
Yeah.
saying though is a real life example of what we talk about theoretically. Because if I could kind of rewind just a little bit this
Shoot.
conversation, the value of your client to the pharmaceutical industry is that that client's likely taking medication in the form of metformin or pick whatever as a diabetic in
Hmm.
perpetuity without you
Hmm.
coming into life. There's this sense of like we're not, the way we deal with diabetes is to medicate the person.
Yeah.
And the value of that person to that industry is super high because
Yeah.
the margin on metformin and pick your medication is just ridiculous. And so moving that person from being diabetic by virtue of much less expensive food, right? I mean, this person's growing a meaningful amount right there in front of them,
Yeah.
changes the economic relationship between that person and the society, and it shifts where the money's being spent. The money's being spent, growing this food
Yep.
there, which to me, we Orrin and I are maybe not entirely conspiracy theorists, that we're not really in that bent, but when we talk about why does the society set up that all this money flows into the pharmaceutical business but not into agriculture, and that if
Yep.
more money was spent in agriculture, and for example, if more people had access to somebody preparing food thoughtfully like you, there would be less diabetics because, we've just demonstrated that within 4 months you undid something that many people, think of as like, well, there's nothing to be done
This is
about it.
just how it is now.
This is just
Like
how it
that's,
is.
and that's when she had the ability, very few people have the ability to
Yeah, right,
have a
right.
private chef, but everybody has the ability. And I do see it more and more where people are meal prepping.
Yes.
That's huge right now, where you can bulk cook a bunch of vegetables, a bunch of meats, put them away. You don't get sick of eating the same thing
Hmm.
necessarily. You rotate through. That is like a first step for people, I
Yeah,
think.
I agree.
It's a great step when you're trying to do something better for your health. You're limiting your portion sizes. It's a big part of why people have the health issues they have, is because they eat a 24-ounce mulligan prime rib or whatever. Like, your body can't process. I've
Mhm.
done it. I've been sick for 2 days, like, would I do it again? Probably, but not very often. Like, it's
Well,
very
and,
rare. And now, like, if I have an 8-ounce steak, I'm like, dude, that's almost too much steak, you
yeah,
know?
no doubt. Yeah, and so it's interesting because the model that you're part of there and you're helping to grow is awesome. How do you see that? We were talking before we started recording about old world style cooking and
Hmm.
and I think to a certain extent, I mean, Pete was just in Italy, and to a certain extent that's still happening in the old world, right? There's still
Sure,
those villages and communities in the
sure.
Mediterranean and in the Middle East and Europe that really have that sense of community around food, and even in
They
Mexico. And
trade. I'm
yeah,
growing eggplants. You got chickens. Let's,
That's right.
you trade back and forth. It is a community mentality, because you want to see your neighbor healthy. And
right.
food here in the United States, food brings people together, but not like, I went to Lisbon this year, and I have never seen food community like that.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Where, like, everything that we ate in every single place came from Portugal.
Right.
Like, and that was just walking, like, we didn't, oh, everything has to be, like, that's just, they take pride in the food that they produce, and so they promote it. Here, you got to hit that 8% every year with your stockholders.
Hmm.
And that's the biggest issue. It's
Hmm.
money. You don't give a shit about health. It's, how can we shave a little more off of what we're giving these people? We could use something a little cheaper as an ingredient. Health wise, we don't know what it does, but we know it's cheaper for us. Putting wood shavings in the Parmesan and shit. Like, there's so
Yeah.
many examples
Yeah.
of them just putting non-food item. Do you remember when
Right.
Subway got in trouble
Yeah.
for, like, they had the same ingredients as yoga mats in their bread?
Nasty.
You wonder why it's like all spongy, dude. You're eating a yoga mat.
Because you're eating the yoga mat. Well, I
It's
mean,
cheaper. It's
and that,
cheaper in Ireland. Subway again
mhm.
got in trouble, for tax wise. So they tax pastries different than they tax bread items. Listen, it has sugar in it, which means it has more detriment to society. So you have to pay more taxes so Ireland's healthcare system can absorb it, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Bread is like 3%, and pastries are like 10, 11, or 12%. There was so much sugar in their bread that it was classified as a pastry. And they had to and so they had to, like, redo the whole dough. Like, dude, it was this whole
Right.
nightmare. They're
That's
like,
all,
dude,
but that's awesome. So those are the incentives. Pete and I did an episode on that and really focused on more nutrition and
yeah,
how Pete felt eating like pizza in Italy versus eating anything back home here, and the change to his physical health,
yeah.
and so I guess my question going back to it is, we live the valley here, the Phoenix area is a fairly, homogenized, you know, it's gridded, and there's a lot of cool things happening, right? But
Yeah,
but in general, it's a pretty, it's about as cookie cutter as you can get when you get into the burbs and everything.
sure.
So how do we in our community, have you given any thought to this? How do our communities start to even incorporate any element of kind of this magical experience that you're having with
One
health and great food?
One of the best ways is community gardens.
I
I
like it.
when I first bought my house here, I live luckily I live about a mile and a half from where I work. I live 7th Ave in Osborne
Nice.
in
Hmm.
Uptown. Um, I had about 300 square feet of garden in my front yard, and just a tiny bit of history. I used to volunteer at St. Vincent de Paul. My One of my good friends was the farm manager there, and 3 to 4 days a week I was down there before my food truck services, just helping out because I kind of wanted to learn how to grow food. And because I had spent so much time, they let me actually start growing my own boxes. So a
Wow.
lot of the produce I used for my food truck and then my restaurant, about 60-70% of it came from the 320 or so square feet that I
Wow.
had at St. Vincent de Paul. And so when I learned the value of nutrition, and that was the first time I
Hmm.
really experienced a tomato off the
Yeah.
vine and was like, holy shit, this is what a tomato's supposed to taste like.
Yeah, right,
Like
Right.
exactly.
I've been fooled my entire
Yes,
life, you know?
totally.
And so I had it in my front yard, and I let my neighbors just come and get some shit. Like come and grab some green onions for your omelet, or come and grab some
Hmm.
tomatoes. And it was successful. Like people really thought it was cool. They would come, and I'd be out there watering, and they would just come and talk to me. And that's building our relationship as people,
Yeah.
Hmm.
as my neighbor. Meaning if I'm gone and they see some weird guy looking at my house, they're gonna go out there, go get the hell out of here.
Right.
That
That's right.
to me
That's right.
is
Yeah.
community, and food is a big part of that. And that's where I see old world. That's
Hmm.
the I'm going to look out for you, you look out for me type of thing. And I don't see that as much in Phoenix, especially in the burbs. Like
Yeah.
it's who's knocking at my door, 20,
Yeah.
30, 40, 40 years ago. It's like you gladly open oh, who's coming over?
Well,
Who
it's
is
funny.
that?
Right.
I
And
lived
now
in
it's
that
like,
neighbor.
yeah, peeking through the windows, like, get the hell out of here. And
I lived
so,
in that neighborhood too, Jason. Like I lived off of right on that on Witten, which is where Shriners is. That's the road. I lived just off of Seventh Street there, down the street
dude,
from the sausage factory.
I live on Witten.
So I was your neighbor where I was on that
That's
road. I
crazy.
was like
Yeah.
731 or something like that, or 831. And one of the things that I noticed living in that neighborhood was that there wasn't garages. And so you
Yeah.
parked your
It's all
car out in
carports.
front, and then so
Yeah.
you got out and you were kind of forced to encounter people. In LA, there's this guy called the Gangster Gardener, Ron Finley, and
Hmm.
he had this big fight in South Central LA where he was like, I will go in the common areas, out in between the sidewalk and the street, and I'll grow food here. And this will make this rather put grass in here, let's put food in there. And the
Yeah.
city beefed with them. This thing went on for years. And they're like, well, people are going to come and get this food. He's like, exactly. Like, that's the whole point here.
That's the
Like
point. We want them to.
we want them to
They
come get this food. Why are we wasting this water growing
they
grass when we could be growing stuff people can eat?
the city, I don't know if it was city run, but there was a community garden on Central and like in
Yes. And
between
yeah,
Indian
yeah,
School, and I think it was private land, and the
yeah.
person ended up selling it, or they're doing something with it.
Orrin knows that
So
guy. Yeah, yeah, you know who that was
yeah,
because that was the
and
urban podcast gardener, Orrin.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
there's not a ton of those spaces left
Yeah,
downtown. So it's going to start taking people, like, I'm going to do this in my front yard.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
That's where people have the space around me. That's where
Sure.
people have the space. Have since moved it to my backyard,
Hmm.
because the cats found it.
Yeah, you
Nice.
can't have that. You gotta
The
have
cats,
a
I could not get the cats out of there. And that's one of the things you have, like, in the backyard. I got dogs,
hmm
there's
Right.
no cats in the backyard for sure. they
Right.
they won't come through. But and so even if you're growing, like, my neighbor across the street, she saw the front yard garden, she was inspired to start doing the garden in the backyard, her
Nice.
backyard. And so it's an inspiration thing. If you could do it and one more person goes, oh shit, if that guy could do it, then
Hmm.
I should be able to. I'm smart enough to go to Home Depot and get a
Right.
little bit of fertilizer. And it can be frustrating. I mean, I've seen those posts where it's like, oh, it's been 3 months and $97 and here's my tomato.
Yeah, yeah.
It can be frustrating, and not everybody has the mind for it. But it's funny, we always look at it, we kind of joke about having, like, in a survival situation like the zombie apocalypse, everybody that we work with, we kind of ranked in the skill sets, and I'm like, dude, I'm in the top one, man, because I can grow food, I can cook food. I was like,
Right.
what can you do? Oh,
Yeah,
you
that's
can't
right.
even
Save
change the
Jason
car
if the
tire.
zombies
Jesus
come.
Christ, we're gonna feed you to the zombies first. you know
Well,
growing.
no, oh, go ahead.
Oh, I
Sorry.
was
Go
gonna
ahead.
say, I mean, growing food, what growing food is such an integral part of our cultural history.
Hmm.
However long humans have been alive and they've figured out agriculture, it's only really been in the past 100 years or so, that it's really been turned into a factory, like where
Mhm.
we have to make it work this certain way. It's not as small scale,
Hmm.
because we have so many distractions. We have so many things that we could be doing instead of planting a garden,
Mhm.
because it is work. It is definitely work, but you see that payoff, and you see the difference in the quality of the produce and the quality of, the meat. Like, we have chickens too. The difference
Mhm.
between harvesting a chicken and going and buying one, like
Yeah,
fresh versus
tell us
frozen.
about that because you'll take a chicken
Oh
that's
yeah,
alive on the farm and then you'll serve that chicken. And I've watched
I
you do
absolutely
videos on
do.
that.
Yeah.
Tell us about like the flavor profile between those two experiences, between going to
it
getting one out of the fridge at the
I mean,
Safeway.
chicken is already so mild. Chicken kind of tastes like whatever you put on it.
Hmm.
However, the chicken thighs on these particular ones, these were slow growth,
Hmm.
and I can't remember the breed. It was a heritage breed, and they were very, very colorful and pretty.
Hmm.
Um, but they were a little thinner, like kind of taller and
Mhm.
leaner. They had yellow skin, which, you look at the skin, it's like kind of pale and whatever, but it had that really cool yellow skin, like those French
Mhm.
chickens. But nutritionally, I couldn't tell you if it had more of this or more of that. I know that, like, steaks, like, I've heard the comparison between grass fed versus
Mhm.
just regular, and there's more omega 3s and
Hmm.
all the good shit that you want. There's more of it because
Mhm.
of, it's not all stored in the fat. It's not just,
Hmm.
you're actually having those nutrients in the meat. And I got to assume the same is for chicken. They eat a completely organic diet. In fact, we ferment their food, so they have
Nice.
probiotics.
Wow.
I give them all the kitchen scraps,
Hmm.
and then anything that they can't have, we put in buckets and compost. We have like a Lear system, if you guys have ever heard of those. It's like kind of a tabletop garden that has its own, compost component. It's really cool.
Okay.
But the chickens, uh, it's more textural. For me, it's more of a
Interesting.
texture thing. When
Uh-huh.
you have something frozen and it tightens up and then it releases moisture versus something that's just been sitting there, it's so tender, and you don't have to, I mean, you almost don't have to chew it. You just kind of gum it,
That's
and it
interesting.
just, the fibers fall apart. Whereas I just had this happen the other day. I cooked some, regular chicken, and it was like a cutlet, and I bit into it. It was like chewy. I was like, "What the
Mhm.
shit? What the hell is going on? Did I cut this thing wrong? I cut it the same way I've always been cutting chicken, and I'm just so used to this better quality now
Yeah,
that I'm
interesting.
like, what the hell is wrong with it?" It's like, dude, it's always been like that. You just didn't
Yes.
realize it
Yeah, yeah.
until
You
you
didn't
had
have
a
a point of
comparison.
such obvious
Well,
comparison. Yeah.
and so we talk a lot about growing your own food and
Mhm.
but also about sourcing food from folks who really care about what they're doing. So let's say you
Absolutely.
can't you can't grow your own meat birds, but you know somebody who does, and or you buy you know local grass-raised beef or whatever it may be. We talk about how it's more precious than a commodity item. So
Yeah.
when you're cooking with this food that was grown right in front of you. And
Mhm.
how has that changed your cooking techniques and your approach to cooking?
I've always had a healthy respect for food. Like growing up in my dad's restaurants, he had restaurants my whole life, and that didn't guarantee that I was going to be a chef. This is actually my second career. I was an audio engineer before, but it once I started growing food when I went to St. Vincent de Paul, and you see how much work goes into it, the science that goes into it, the being at the mercy of the elements, having a good crop versus
Yeah.
a bad crop, you respect the food more. It's about respecting the food. Like people, I see videos sometimes on social media where people are just throwing shit around, and it's
Hmm.
like, dude, that I worked at a homeless. It was basically a homeless. St. Vincent de Paul feeds 4,000 homeless people a
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Like they have the biggest commercial kitchen in Arizona.
Wow.
Like they don't mess around there. And the whole idea of them having an urban farm, it's 2 acres, was that they wanted the people that they fed to have access to organic food,
Yeah.
just like
Hmm.
everybody else. It's like, why can't we give this to them? Why can't we have organic tomatoes in the salads that we're giving these people? Like they should have access to that. And it was because it's nutrient dense, it's fresher food, it's better for them, which means if their health is better, then they have a
Right.
better chance mentally and
Yeah. Yeah.
physically of changing
Hmm.
their position, changing their lot in life, so to speak. Good food can make or break your mood. We all know
Absolutely.
that.
Without a
Yeah.
doubt.
We all know that. And so when you have kind of my situation where I can walk out the door and grab, like this morning I grabbed Egyptian spinach, I grabbed New Zealand spinach, some 2 or 3 different kinds of radishes, turnips, beets. I mean, there's like 3 or 4 more things. Like it's like you forget it. It just becomes kind of automatic. Like, oh, this is what I'm going to make a salad.
Hmm.
I supplement a little bit of iceberg or romaine in there for some crunch. I got some moringa in there. Like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
this super moringa is
Yeah.
crazy superfood. I sneak that shit into almost everything. I like powderize it
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
then sneak it in. It's like
Nice.
smoothies and soups and all kinds of stuff. But
Well, I
but
mean,
yeah.
so as we I think one of the things we're interested in is like particularly you is restaurateur and knowledge of the restaurant industry.
Mhm.
And when you look at we're trying to figure out how do we get the ethic that you're describing into people's lives. And some of it, as you say, like, well, the personal chef route is the unlikely route. Like that's not going to
Yeah.
happen. However, there's two other sources then in which, the two other vehicles is buying directly from growers like the farmers
Hmm.
market or careful selection, at your grocery, and then restaurants. And so I,
Hmm.
I ate at Bata down in Tucson, and they source everything within 400 miles of Tucson. So nothing on that plate is outside of that radius. But I mean, do you have a notion of is it possible and realistic with the proper design to bring that ethic into the restaurants in an affordable manner? I mean, the
I
reason why
think
we
that
have this commodity food so inexpensive is that it has economies of scale. So,
that
you processing a chicken on the ranch there's nothing scalable about that. But surely there must be ways in which we can bring that delicious chicken to the people,
it's
right? So how do we do
it,
it?
it's a sticker shock. Like I think people just don't understand how much food actually costs.
Hmm.
A chicken, if it's grown locally and it's fed well and it's harvested and sent to, let's say, Underbelly, they do chicken there. They get their stuff from Two Wash Ranch. Two Wash
Hmm.
is probably the best known chicken place around Phoenix. They treat their animals well.
Okay.
It's a quality product. It always tastes good. They don't freeze. They don't need to. They have a harvest schedule, from what I understand. They have a harvest schedule that they don't need to. But they can't serve the entire. Like if I go buy a chicken from Underbelly, it's like $30.
Right.
If I go buy a chicken from the store, it's half that price.
Yeah.
On the worst day, sometimes you could get them for $7, $8 for the
Sure.
same size chicken. So when you've got a whole family to feed, how do you extend that whole chicken?
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
and that's the tough part is um, getting people to see what food actually costs and not wasting it. You know, like
Hmm.
Mhm.
that's a big how much food ends up in landfills. Like it's like 40% or some shit.
Hmm.
It's like it's a staggering amount of food.
Yes.
And so when you could figure out ways to stretch, like even I'll make chicken thighs bone in after we're done eating. I save all the bones, throw them in the freezer. When I got enough, I make a stock.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Mhm.
super easy. It just takes a tiny little bit of extra effort to make your food stretch a little more. So that $30, you're not just getting one meal out of it, you're
Right.
getting two or three out of it. You know, and
And
that's
and oh
go
no,
ahead.
that's awesome. And I want to refer back to because I haven't I'm just learning today of your videos and uh I'm gonna start watching them for sure. But do you deal with that topic when you're teaching or you're showing folks, how to prepare a certain menu item or ingredient or
I haven't it's the videos I do. I haven't started doing like a lot of long form stuff. It's like
right.
kind of the minute reels, and it's hard to wax poetic in a minute without like
Hmm.
sounding like an asshole. And
Right.
so, and so I really try to keep it informational, kind of funny. You know,
Mhm.
it gets people interested, and then when they start asking questions, that's when I can really drop knowledge on them.
Mhm.
Right.
If I don't know, I will sit there and like I Google shit and answer questions on Instagram. You know, like that's not a lot of people answer the comments. And I guess once you get to a certain point, it gets tough. But right now, I'm at that point where I can still interact with people on a one-to-one basis, and it means that I'm gonna learn. If I don't know it, that means I'm gonna learn something along with you. And I liken it to teaching piano, and you're like one lesson ahead of the kid.
Right.
Well, I mean, there's a few things that I'm curious about as we go down this what I consider to be an inevitable fork in the road, and that we will either continue to spend, the money for diabetes for me is the easiest example, right?
Hmm.
Like we will either continue to treat this as something that is the provenance of the pharmaceutical industry or it's the provenance of the farmer,
Yeah.
and it's so clear that your client's life is so much better for having taken those 4 months to kind of straighten out a very curable situation.
I
Um,
mean, how important is your health to you?
if your
You
health
know, it
isn't
was
right,
important.
you
It's
understand
important
how.
enough to her to spend the money. I mean, because that
Mhm.
there's my salary and then there's food cost,
Sure, yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
and equipment cost. She's like, whatever you want to buy it.
right.
I did ask for like a $7,000 freeze dryer,
She got
and
sensitive.
it's on the waiting list. So
Okay, well that's fair.
I think I'm
So,
waiting for the payout
But yeah,
like
well,
she gets the
Jason,
payouts in
so
January. I
I'm
think I have to
glad you
wait.
mentioned it. So, my wife Diana bought a smaller version of a freeze dryer. It's 3 trays,
Yeah.
but we have a orchard, and one of our biggest issues was peach waste,
yeah,
Yeah.
and a lot of them would go to our chickens, but uh, so she started harvesting the overripe peaches and turning it into a paste, with
Hmm.
no additives, and then
Hmm.
freeze drying it, and then turning it into like Pete didn't know what astronaut ice cream was. I had to educate him on that. But
Oh man.
basically, so basically freeze drying these peaches and you were talking about nutritional value before in pasteurization or
Yeah.
heating food. There's a decline in the nutritional value of that ingredient, even if it was grown in the most pristine way,
Yeah.
organically grown right on your own property. But freeze drying is phenomenal. So hopefully that's something you can get into
It
because, yeah.
it's the pinnacle right now. It's the pinnacle of food preservation. It's like the
Mhm.
best technology that we have available to save the structure of the product, whatever it is, to save the nutritional value of the
Mhm.
product. Heat degrades, and whatever the process is, again, I'm not a scientist, but whatever that process is, they've done the tests and it saves the nutrition. And it
Mhm.
saves that food for like 20 something years if
yeah.
you pack
It's
it right.
crazy. Yeah,
When and yeah,
exactly.
my boss is a bit of a prepper. This is why she has a 40-acre property up north. I'm not allowed to say where really. Um, but it's like when the zombie apocalypse happens, like we need to be able to have enough. I want to make a giant bucket of chili and then freeze dry it so we have chili in the apocalypse, man.
Right.
Like I got to be able to, the way that we have it set up. I just did an inventory and we've got about 2 years worth of food for 40 people.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, it's incredible. Beans,
That's
rice, like that's another
crazy.
part of my job is managing that inventory, checking dates, rotating things
Yeah.
in and
Well, that'd
out.
be 36 people, your flying included, Orrin and I. Now we're down to
Yeah.
just 30 since we
it
know.
it also depends on what kind of apocalypse it is. If it's like, a power outage, yeah, 40 people. If it's like a zombie apocalypse, my wife personally, she's like, dude, just shoot me right in the face. And I'm like, now I got 4 years worth of food. If we can get 20 people that's great. That's grim, but it doesn't hurt to have that type of. I mean, look what happened in COVID, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look what like people. We still had access to all the commercial food places like Restaurant Depot and Costco
Yeah, yeah.
business, so we could still go buy like 40-pound cases of chicken and shit when we had the restaurant. And so I took everybody I knew, like, hey, let's go to
Yeah.
Restaurant Depot, like load up a cart, whatever, I'll buy it, pay me back. You need to make sure you have whatever, buy some lentils, buy some
Yeah.
beans. Like it's not always about peak nutrition. It's also about having a supply. If something
Yeah.
does happen, look at what happened in Florida. I mean, Florida is basically washed out
Yeah.
right now, and a lot of people are running off their emergency supplies. So having nutrition, stored energy, if you think about it, food as energy, you are storing energy for a later date.
And
Yeah.
I mean, for me, the outcome of those things, are less, the prepping element of it in terms of making that an ethic for most people
Yeah.
is that it changes the relationship between the food and the person, that it
Hmm.
creates a more thoughtful disposition. Like
100%.
I was listening to the president of the pharmaceutical company. Is it Eli Whitney? Right? Or
Oh yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
That was
And
a
he's
yeah.
saying, "Hey, you know what? We really don't understand why people are obese." And so listening to this person say that in an interview was one of those things that really got to me because now I'm in the land of really starting to believe the conspiracy between big ag, big pharmacy, and that. Because if that guy's going to stand in front of me and say we don't really understand why we're so obese in this country,
It's
you know
money strategy. This is
it.
it's a strategy that they've put into place to make more money, and they didn't set out to
I
make
agree. I get the
people
unintended point.
obese.
Yeah,
It
right, right.
just happened, and they were like, "Oh, cool! Like now we can make money this other way." Like that's
Right.
it. They're business people. That's what they do. They figure out how to make money in the current climate or current
Sure.
situation,
Mhm.
and they're like, "Holy shit, we've got all these people that are heavy." The wellness industry
Hmm.
is like twice dollar wise is like twice what the pharmaceutical industry is. Like selling you supplements and shit.
Mhm.
It's snake oil. It's all snake
Mhm.
oil. The little my boss takes fish oil and I'm like, so what's up with fish oil? So I just kind of like looked it up. I'm like,
Sure.
oh, dude, it has a lot of great benefits. And then next couple articles, it's like it goes rancid after like 3 or 4 months, and it loses over 50% of its nutritional value. So
Yeah.
like, but they don't tell you that. You're just sitting
Mhm.
there thinking you're doing something good for your health, but you're not
Right.
storing it in the fridge, or it's old, or it's almost expired. Whatever it is. You know
Yeah.
what the best way to get fish oil is? Eat some fucking
Ease.
sardines. Fuck, dude.
Yeah, have the fish.
Have the fish.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude. Eat
You
the
want
fish.
fish
Stop.
oil? Get some
Don't drink
fish.
its juices. Like
Well,
Yeah.
have the
you
fish.
just saved me $60 a month, Jason, but I feel like an
Yeah,
asshole too.
yeah,
God damn it, I
You,
was eating fish
dude.
oil.
yeah.
Costco has like this 6-pack of sardines, and I couldn't tell you the brand, but I have 2 a week, and I used to have like I don't know if it was gout or whatever, but like my big toe was swollen.
Oh my goodness.
Once I started eating sardine, it went away. Like totally went away. I don't know what
Right.
it
That's
did, but it
they
lubed
fixed
me
your
up.
toe. All right,
Yeah.
all right.
I, I'm seeing it now. There's a run on sardines at Costco already.
Yeah.
All of our listeners have
Shit.
vacated.
I gave
Well,
away the goat, man.
yeah, you gave it away. Well, in Lisbon too, or in Portugal, you must. I mean, they're like the tin fish capital of the world, right? I mean, those
They
guys.
are. It's what I learned is like it's kind of a tour. They've turned it into a tourist thing where they have all these little tin fish shops and
Sure,
whatever. But yeah, that was their form of preservation.
right.
It's salt curing. It is oil storage. Like I
Hmm.
do a lot of confit cooking,
Yeah.
which
Yes.
is fantastic. Like you could, I'll cook a roast, like a chuck roast or whatever. It stays up. I'll keep it in the fridge under that fat. Like 5 weeks later, I'm like, oh, let's do some tacos.
Yeah.
Like
Mhm.
you don't have to mess with it. It's really cool, and it's a simple thing to do. That's kind
Yes.
of what the videos are about. Is it's taking the mystery like confit, you salt it, you let it sit there for a day, and then you put it under oil and you cook it. Like
All
it does.
day. Right.
That's
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
it's not that. It takes a little time, but it's not out of
Right.
this world complicated. It's the
Right.
opposite. It's
Well,
like
and that's the
two things.
tension that I'm hoping,
Yeah.
resolves in the way that I hope exists is that there's this, give me a pill mentality in the country that exists both in the business side of it and in people side of it because they're accommodated to staying out of the kitchen. I mean, they'd rather for me, it's not the person who's eating a giant porterhouse that's really where we're at risk. It's the person who's eating, things that are being served to them through a to-go window in the
Yeah.
form of the fast food that is really
Yeah.
where we're kind of stuck. But at the same
Yeah,
time,
man. If you're door dashing McDonald's, dude, you got issues.
yeah, you
I
got
I,
issues.
I accidentally
Yeah.
got like $30 or $40 worth of McDonald's delivered to my house. Like, what the hell? The guy's just standing out there with like
Yeah,
four
with this
bags. I'm
bag.
like, dude, that's not for me.
Yeah.
My neighbor comes running over. He's, oh, dude, I
Yeah,
put
he
in the wrong
probably wasn't
address.
running if
I'm
he
like, dude,
ordered $40
I
worth
could
of.
I could hit the McDonald's with a rock from my house, dude. Like
Dude.
that's like he couldn't do the 150 yards to McDonald's.
Dude, I
It's
look at
crazy.
my teenage son, he's 18 now, but I look at he's on our bank account so we could see
Mhm.
his spending, and he spent one time like recently like $23 on Jack in the Box, and I was like, "Oh my God, how much diarrhea did you
Dude,
have, bro?"
that's what it costs now. Like that's what's crazy. It's like that's not even like when you think about what $23 in Jack in the Box got you in like 1999,
Oh my
it could
God.
feed the entire car.
Or
And
at least get an
like
all E. coli.
you got a combo and maybe one extra burger. Like the
Dude, that's
McDonald's, and
crazy.
this is a win for our side.
That's right. Yeah.
McDonald's just put their first down quarter in something like 10 quarters, and
Mhm.
McDonald's is kind of a mini stock barometer.
I
Mhm.
agree.
Like if
Yeah.
McDonald's isn't doing well, the stock market's usually not doing that well, or that sector isn't doing that well. And so they're scrambling for 13, 14, $15 combos. You go to McDonald's because it's fast and convenient. You make the deal with them that the food is shit. It
Right.
Right.
is.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know it. Everybody that goes to McDonald's knows it.
Right.
You make the deal because it's cheap and it's fast and it's convenient. And now if it can only be
It's got to have
it
all
can't
three.
be expensive too. Then it
Yeah.
turns people off.
Right. Yeah.
It's got to be. It could be
Yeah.
expensive and good. It's not going to be fast,
Right.
right? That's like that old restaurant saying.
Yeah. Right.
It's going to be fast and cheap. It's not going to be very good.
Right.
So
But that's
that's
the
the deal.
tension that I'm
And
curious
now
about.
there's
Yeah.
people are pushing back and starting to go to places like Underbelly. He
Yeah.
started doing burgers, and that place is like packed for lunch now
Yeah.
because
Right.
you may not be able to afford a $42 a pound ribeye, but you
Right.
could afford a $14 or $15 hamburger.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I mean,
especially if
it's
that's what you're going to spend at the junkie places. But I
and
mean,
then
this
and you
is an
know it's the
education.
if
Yeah,
you
go ahead.
know it's going to be the best version of that
Yes, yes,
hamburger that
right, right,
he made his own sauce. The bun is from a local place. The
right.
Mhm.
meat, it's fantastic. The onions, he did a 14-hour confit, caramelized
Right.
them. Like the guy knows what he's doing.
Just like
And so when you
McDonald's.
want when you want a Big Mac, go there. It's the same price.
Yeah.
Maybe you miss out on a drink or whatever, but it's like
But
Yeah.
then that burger becomes an act of virtue, right? Now this is like the burger is not the problem. It's what's on that. It's the way the burger comes to us. But the tension that I'm curious about is like the videos you're doing and YouTube, Instagram, social media, TikTok, all that stuff is now replete with people showing other people how to, do things in a way that it wasn't available before. I
Hmm.
mean, when I watch your stuff, and there's a whole bunch of people who I like doing similar things, so there's there's whoever are attracted to in terms of how they convey the information. But I think that to get people back in the kitchen to get control of things, they have to have a sense of like what to do. I mean,
Yeah.
not everybody
And
I grew up with my grandmother cooking for us every day. So the
yeah,
Mhm.
notion of cooking was a very familiar, I went into the adult world equipped with, hey, you know what? I can make some things, and that kind
hmm
of fed my, um,
it
my opinion is once you start to do that, it is very hard to go back and taste. You go to Underbelly, have their burger, and then you go back and taste, a commodity
it's
burger.
great.
Yeah.
It's great because then you know what a hamburger is supposed to
Yeah.
taste like, and then you get mad at McDonald's just for existing. You
And
know,
then how
like
but it's also how you feel after that burger. I mean,
That's
yeah,
right.
I can already, I just know from how you're speaking of Underbelly, and I have it on my notes to go visit, but
yeah,
is that it's gonna you're just gonna feel a lot better eating that than,
yeah.
going to McDonald's or wherever. Yeah.
You're not gonna feel sick. There's nothing else in there but what's in there.
Right.
Like
Right. Yeah.
that's it. There's no bullshit in it because he has a no bullshit policy.
Right.
That's that, and there's more of those places popping up. It's a matter of whether it's sustainable or not.
Right.
Like people like my boss that could pay $40 a pound for a ribeye or $50 for a fillet or whatever it is. That's not accessible for everybody.
Sure.
But dude, I don't eat filet mignon. I can't afford it. Like I
Right.
don't
Right. Yeah.
get to eat filet. When I do, maybe once or twice a year, I'm going to him to get it because
Yeah.
it's a luxury. It's something
Mhm.
that um, I treat myself to instead of, oh, it's
Right.
steak Friday or like whatever.
It's
Yeah.
Like
precious. It's precious, and that's what
it
it
is
should be. Yes.
because the energy that it took to get from
Hmm.
A to your plate, and it's a lot. There's it's funny, like when you think of how many people are involved in the process of getting a cow, harvesting it, and
Yeah. Yeah.
bringing it to you. And even on a very small scale, I mean, there's 30, 40 people. Like that's a conservative estimate, I think. But
Hmm.
if you think about the ranchers,
Sure.
the people that grew the food, the people that delivered it to the butcher, the people that work at the butcher shop, there might be a few other people in between there, but it's not a lot of people. And then
Right.
you think about large scale, it's thousands. It's
Hmm.
thousands of people. You get ground beef from the store, it's 400 different cows in the ground beef.
Yeah.
When you get it
Yeah.
from this place, it's
That's a
single
sick.
origin.
Yeah. That's right. One
Yeah.
cow.
You don't have
And
to worry about getting sick from it because the only reason you get sick is because one of those 400 cows is sick and it infected the
Yeah.
rest of the meat.
I know.
When
right.
you get single origin, it's like either nothing or everybody's getting sick.
Yeah.
Right.
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 Yeah.
Yeah.
you
Well,
know?
yeah. It's interesting. I mean, we had a good friend of ours is Tim Peterson,
Hmm.
who has Arizona grass raised beef, and we
Yeah.
did an episode with him, and it was phenomenal. I would encourage you to listen to it actually, but he really has a great outlook on it, but he talks about what it takes to raise and he does it old world style. I mean, he's raising these things way longer than the
Yes.
traditional American
Yeah.
beef,
I mean,
and
it's 9 months, 10 months, I think is the usual. Is it that like the length for most cows?
yeah,
And then
I think they have to harvest by like 15 months to preserve, if they want to preserve the spinal cord and do the ribeyes and all that and
there you go. I mean,
porterhouses. Yeah.
15 months is nothing. It's
Yeah.
it's nothing.
Yeah.
And most of the ones that we've been getting are 2 years plus. They're running around the desert for like 2 years before they catch them.
His are like 5 to 7 years,
Oh
which is,
wow, that's incredible.
and they're all on the pasture. It's like when you're driving up to Sedona, Cottonwood,
Yeah,
Prescott, they're all the ones roaming in the hills there. It's
I
really,
almost
really
nailed I
cool.
almost nailed one last week going up to my boss's property. I mean,
That,
Well,
like
dude,
when
that's
I say
my beef
almost, I
prices are
mean
gonna go up.
like
yeah.
10 feet, like
Yeah.
10 feet,
It's
and that
okay
thing
if you
just looked at me
gotta
like, what? do
temperature
something about
controlled
it.
vehicle as you nail them. Only hit them
Oh
in those so
Jesus,
that way
yeah,
you can butcher them right there on the side.
yeah.
Well, let's do two things to wrap this up.
Shoot,
Number one, we're maybe you could give some advice on either books or movies or Netflix things or whatever to kind of give people an easy way
sure,
to think a little bit about this. And then two, let's get people watching your lessons on social media. So why don't you do those two
absolutely.
things?
The two things that I'll keep it easy. There's a
Okay.
book called Ratios,
Okay.
and it breaks down cooking into ratios. Like, so if you want to make a dough, so you could upscale it or downscale it however you want. It's four parts of this to, and when you start thinking about food that way,
Nice.
you get a really good base knowledge, and then you have a lot of places you can go. You
Okay.
learn how to make a basic bechamel. You can learn about 10 more sauces from a basic bechamel. You
Okay.
can learn how
Great.
to make a cheese sauce.
Hmm.
Some people know how to do some of this stuff, like French technique. They just don't know that they're doing it,
Yeah.
you know? So
Awesome.
Ratios is my favorite book. That's kind of how I learned how to cook.
Okay.
Okay.
Because then you could throw away recipes, like
Right.
fuck
Yes.
recipes. That's for bakers. Uh, um, and then there's a Netflix show, and it probably came out 5, 6 years ago. I think I'll probably getting the order wrong, but it's called Salt, Fat,
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Heat,
yeah.
Hmm.
Sour, something. I
Yeah.
it's
Acid. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
acid. Thank you.
Yeah.
That lady, I met one time in
Okay.
LA. I mean, that's like the Persian community. I'm Persian, and the Persian community outside of Iran, it's like the biggest in LA. And so
Oh,
she
wow.
was like
Gotcha.
in the circle. My dad being a restaurateur, she was kind of in that circle. And
Gotcha.
I was just blown away by how much information just salting the water.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Right.
Like what salting the water does to pasta and rice to
Hmm.
to make it taste better. And you learn that at some point in your life. You weren't born with that knowledge.
Right.
And so when you get a really good base knowledge of how to treat the ingredients, and then you spend a little more and you spend a little more, you take a little more care with
Hmm.
what you're cooking, and you pay more attention to what you're doing. It's not just, oh, I got to get a one pot meal done for the kids.
Right.
You
Right. Yeah.
can,
Yeah.
but you can add some shit to that to make it more nutritional for your kids.
Right.
You like mac and cheese? Dude, throw some broccoli in there. They don't like
Hmm.
broccoli. Blend it all up. Now it's cheese
Hmm.
soup. They don't. You know what I'm saying? Like you could eat. Kids are pretty easy to fool. Let's be
Right.
Well,
honest.
see, I'm glad you brought up that show, and I'm already buying the book Ratio, but the
Yeah.
ratios, but you know, that's the one show on Netflix that I don't drink while I'm watching. Because I'm like, wait, I gotta remember. She's so interesting and she's
She
so
is.
passionate. Like her passion is just
Yeah.
like, and she doesn't care about how the camera sees her. It's like she's like eating stuff and tasting it and making all the noises, and I'm
Mhm.
like, it does. Like I love it.
That's
That's a
Persian.
great
That's
recommendation.
Persian cooking. Like that's
Yeah.
kind of what I grew up with. My mom is white as snow. She's German Irish, like blonde, blue, hot. But I was made in Iran. My parents moved back here right before the revolution, but she learned how to cook Persian food when she was there.
Okay.
And so she blows people away with her kebab and her rice. Like people are like,
Oh,
how the hell
dude,
do you
that's
know how to
awesome.
do that? Are
Yeah. Yeah.
you Persian? And she's like, no, I just, I live there. And so a lot of that, my dad wasn't a great cook. He was an amazing manager.
Right.
He could
Right.
cook, but he couldn't do a kebab to save his life.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, like that's like give it a shout out to that one. I can't remember her name, but that is one of the best
Yeah. I think
cooking
it's like
shows on
Samin Norsrat or so.
yeah,
Nasrat, something
yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's somewhere. I'm not great with Persian names, remembering Persian names. They all
Right.
kind of
Right.
sound the same.
Yeah, she was a chef at Chez Panisse.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
I
right.
think
That's
that's
right.
where she
That's
cut her
right.
yeah,
teeth.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Very cool.
But
Well,
yeah,
great
those
recommendations. Yeah.
those are my two favorites. And if I could give one piece of advice, is just don't
Yeah.
be afraid.
Yeah. I
You're
agree.
you will burn stuff. You will drop stuff. You'll put a ton of effort into something,
Right. Right.
and it'll turn out terrible. Like that, it can't discourage you from going to the next
Mhm.
to the next thing. And I think that's one of the reasons I've been mildly successful is, people are like, dude, how did you learn how to do that? I'm like, I don't know, I just did it.
Yeah,
Like
give
you
it a shot.
just do it. And then as you increase your kind of base knowledge, you can expand, you can get more creative. I did a French dinner on Friday night for my boss and some of her friends, and I did a tuna or a salmon niçoise salad,
Oh,
but I
wow.
did it as a roulade. So every
Mm.
element of the salad was rolled up tight in these like layered mustard and red charred greens, and then you take like sushi, you take a cross section of it, quail eggs and circular like potatoes that I punched out with a cannoli tube, and
Nice.
I like really put some effort into it. It was my least favorite dish. It looked beautiful, but it was of the night, it was my least favorite dish. My favorite
Huh.
dish was the milfoy. It was like the simplest dessert, lemon curd and marshmallow and some phyllo, and it was like, wow, simple is better in
Mhm.
my opinion.
Right, right.
When
Mhm.
you have good ingredients, you don't have to fuck them up.
Yeah,
Let them
exactly.
shine. Let
Yep.
those when you get a good tomato, let that tomato shine. Why do you think caprese salads are so popular?
Yep.
Because you get a good tomato, you get good cheese, and you get nice basil. There's nothing to hide behind.
Mhm.
Like those three things have to be the best versions of those three things
Hmm.
Yeah.
in order for that salad to work. I know each one of us has had a shitty caprese salad
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right.
where it's terrible mozzarella, a
Mhm.
weird pink watery tomato, and
Yep.
bruised ass basil with some shitty sticky balsamic over the top of it.
Right.
It's
Right.
awful. So people, when you work with ingredients like that, when you get a like actual buffalo mozzarella in
Right, right.
Arizona, you're
Yeah,
going to
yeah.
take care of that shit.
Right,
Mhm.
right,
you know
right.
and so that base knowledge is important. Respecting the ingredients is important, and not being afraid
Yeah,
is
amen.
important.
Yeah, without a
Yeah.
doubt. All right,
That's
where
awesome.
people, where tell us where to find you. You're all over. You got all your socials
Yeah,
covered. Where should we
luckily
book?
my social is easy. It's on Instagram. It's Jayson in Phoenix, Jayson in Phoenix, all spelled out. That's pretty much, I think, all my socials
Oh,
across the
okay,
board.
Okay.
Jason and Phoenix. Don't forget the
Yeah,
Y though.
yeah. Oh yeah, don't forget the Y.
Don't
Yeah,
forget the Y.
Jayson. My
Yes,
So,
dad had a thing for Y's. My brother's name is James with a Y
with
too.
the Y. Amen.
oh, nice. So,
Yeah.
Jason, I have to say, because Pete's gonna, he'll probably wind things up, but normally Pete is like the timekeeping. He's very anal about it, I
Hey,
have to
it's
say,
true. I let us go long.
Yeah,
And
we did
so,
go. I've been kind of watching the clock. I'm
so,
like,
so, so
I'm just
you,
waiting for you to flash a light or something.
so he would you definitely were very our most engaging guest so far because Pete let you go over the time limit.
Nice.
He's never let anyone go over the time
Yeah,
limit.
I can
I,
talk an hour about a 5 minute topic.
yeah, exactly. Well,
That's my
yeah.
curse.
That's what Orrin says. He says, ask Pete to tell the time and build you a watch. So,
Yeah.
listen, we love this. It's true. Maybe you'll come back another time and
Sure.
we'll pick this up again. There's lots to, and like I said, I'm a huge fan of what you're doing out there. I watch all of them and I've learned a lot. It's been as a piece of education I can attest to uh they've changed some ways in which I've looked at some things and I've practiced stuff. I need to get a little braver on the fermentation because I've been a little gun shy on that. But yeah,
It
but
could be a little scary, but there's basic rules that you can follow, and the old kitchen, if when in doubt, throw it out.
throw it
I
out.
just had
Yeah,
that
yeah.
happen recently. I had some tomatillos go south because I didn't fill up the airlock. It
Yeah,
just was like
Oh,
sitting in
I
the
saw that.
back,
Yeah,
and
exploded. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
and
It's okay
somebody
to
said,
some
"Oh, that's
tomatillos
just."
were hurt
They were
in
like,
this
"Oh, that's
making.
just cam yeast." I'm like, "Bro, you can't. I can see it. You're looking at my through my iPhone 13 camera. Like I can see the fuzz on the top. And even if it
Yeah,
wasn't, it's gonna taste like shit. Throw it
yeah,
out. Cam
right.
yeast
yeah.
tastes
That's right.
terrible."
That's right.
Yeah,
Tomatillo's not filet mignon. You can
Well,
use
I
them where you
I
will.
exactly.
I have to say this has been a lot of fun. I've learned a ton. I took a ton of notes
Cool.
and yeah, I think it would be a lot of fun for us to get together off screen here and cook together, drink together,
Yeah.
Oh
you
hell
know.
yeah. Yeah, that would be
Yeah.
amazing. And I really appreciate talking with you guys. It's I love camaraderie in food, when
Yeah.
people kind of have that same forward mentality. Like this is, we can't all be perfect in our food quest. It's hard,
Right,
it
right.
can't.
Yeah.
I do like Jack in the Box tacos. Like I really do. I don't drink nearly as much as I used to, so I don't have them nearly as often as I used to. It's the only time I ever eat them is when I'm
Right.
drinking.
That's right. Tequila is the gateway to
Yeah,
those
dude.
late
I
night
I
Yeah.
tacos.
volunteer to be designated driver a lot just to quell that
Mhm.
whole thing. Um, but I think that you could take those you could make steps, and as you make steps, you kind of like a couple years down the road, you're like, holy shit, I'm on the path.
That's
Yeah,
Like
right.
that's
you're on
right.
the path, and cutting those things out gets a little easier, or it's a little easier to maintain your control. You don't go crazy and eat garbage food every single day.
You
It's
can,
okay to
yeah,
have
things can
some a
change.
little. Yeah, and
Compound
so
those
I
gains.
really enjoyed talking with you
Yeah,
guys,
likewise,
and
bud.
I can't wait to have some beers
Well,
off
We'll
well,
screen.
do it.
hopefully you didn't miss the call from the
Nope.
about your
Yeah.
car.
No, they did not call. So
Okay.
apparently I'm walking to work tomorrow.
Well, the weather's nice, so thankfully you'll probably enjoy the walk.
Yeah,
All right.
absolutely. Well, thank you guys again. I really
Yeah,
appreciate
man, it
it.
was awesome. Nice to meet you, man.